The winningest coach in NBA history, and Greg Popovich, signed a deal making him the highest paid coach in the NBA. We're going to talk about why that's important for him and for the future of Victor Wembanyama and why the Spurs have just locked in their future. We're also going to talk about the best free agents left on the market currently. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host here, Haize, one of the hosts, holding it down for the squad. You guys can follow the show at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on, which is Twitter, TikTok, some more other than that. But let's go ahead and get into the content for today. So first up, the Spurs locked in Coach Greg Popovich on a 5-year deal worth $80 million, making him the highest paid coach in NBA history. When you look at Greg Popovich, initially starting his career under Larry Brown as the lead assistant in 1988, while he briefly left the franchise to go be an assistant under Nelson in the Golden State Warriors in 1992. He returned to the Spurs as the general manager and vice president of basketball operations in 1994, and then named himself as the head coach in 1996. When you look at his tenure as the head coach, leading the team and players that included Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, and more. Devin Vassell, DeJounte Murray's been through there, right? All the players that he's led. And, of course, a Hall of Famer. You already know that, right? When you know what that means, at the end of the day, Greg Popovich is a great in this game, and he's somebody that you cannot overlook. And you don't typically get coaches that stay with the franchise as long as what Greg Popovich has been with this franchise. You just don't get it. The head coach since 1996, right? Only, doing the things of leading that franchise to championships, everything throughout the years and decades of just guiding and young players in their development. The one thing with the San Antonio Spurs that franchises have just been great and an anomaly amongst NBA teams in general is how they develop talent. And when you have a player that's a generational talent and Victor Wembanyama coming down there, it makes the most sense to lock in that coach. And I'm sure Greg Popovich is going to be reinvigorated in so many different ways, coaching and guiding the career of a young generational talent. But even outside of that, right? The Spurs, who have had their issues in the last handful of years, they have not had a season of above 40 wins since 2018-19 season. But, of course, the arrow is now on its way up. You draft a generational talent. You have a head coach down there who is going to get the most out of every single shred of potential of the players down there. Those young players, he's going to get that potential down there. He's going to teach them the right way, the fundamentals, how to play in the modern NBA, how to have the right mindset, how to go about your business. Greg Popovich is going to lead all of that. And it's more than just Wemby, right? Of course, Wemby is the generational talent down there. He's the one that this is going to benefit the most of. But when you look at the young players they have down there, they have Malachi Branham, who's an extremely young player as well down there, right? They have Devin Vassell, who I'm extremely high on. I love Devin Vassell. Jeremy Sohan, who can still turn into a solid player for that I wish it was Chicago, for that San Antonio Spurs team, right? Trey Jones, a player down there who could be the guard that leads that team going forward into the future. There are so many young pieces down there, and now that they have that generational talent, getting and teaching them how to play together the right way. You want a coach who's going to install those fundamentals. You want a head coach that's going to teach a player how to do the right things. And Greg Popovich is all of that. And when you look at Wemby, and yes, having a big game in his second summer league game after so many people people just love having the knee-jerk reactions. But Greg Popovich is the right guy at the right time, at the right franchise, with the right player. It all makes the most sense. And I love seeing how they locked him in. I love seeing how, Greg Popovich, who, rumored a couple years ago that he may retire when his contract was up. Now, it did get rumored late last season that the Spurs were prepared to offer him a contract that was going to allow him to coach as long as he wanted to, which they did. Greg Popovich is 74 years old, but he is the right guy at the right time, and he's the right coach to guide this first leg of Wemby's career, at least. That's if he doesn't even re-up after that. But to start off Wemby's career under one of the best, if not the best head coach of all time, that's something that you just cannot overlook or pass up. That's a luxury that a lot of players don't have. We've seen players talk about how coaches ruined their confidence and how it really affected their game. Larry Markin is one. When he talked about how Jim Boylan with the Chicago Bulls really impacted his confidence in how he played the game. And so with that said, they did the right thing. They do the right thing. Pop coaching Wemby is going to set that team up for the next level of what could possibly be a dynasty. And we'll see how that's continued to guided by Greg Popovich, leading that first part of Wemby's career. But before we go, I do want to talk some general NBA news as well. We want to go over some of the best free agents still left on the market. There's still someone that are really good still out there. And the first one we're going to talk about is Christian Wood. Now, Christian Wood has his issues, especially defensively. He has his issues sometimes with jacking up bad shots. We understand all that, right? But when you look at like a stretch that Christian Wood had in December when he took over at the starting role, 20 points per game, 9.4 rebounds, 2.4 blocks, 2.3 assists, 2 threes per game, hitting that at a 36% clip. Christian Wood, yes, is not a perfect player by any stretch of the imagination, and some could say that maybe he was overpaid in his last contract. But the fact of the matter that he is gone without a deal thus far is really surprising to me, right? And the fact that there's really been no even rumblings about teams' interest in Christian Wood. He's not at all a great player, right? And he's not going to be a huge miss either. But when you look at what he's done, when you look at over the last 4 years, averaging 17 points per game, 8.2 blocks, 1.3 threes, 1 block over that time, that is a player that has the production that you can look and see. Now, when you look at the fact that he's bounced from a bunch of teams, right? He's played on 7 teams in 7 years, which may be the thing that's hurting him the most here. He'll be playing on his 8th team potentially. And so you have to have your questions around that. But Christian Wood is still absolutely a player that in the right scenario and situation can absolutely help teams in the NBA. Next up, PJ Washington. Now, it makes a little bit more sense why PJ Washington doesn't have a deal yet. Restricted free agents, they can go late into free agencies until they get their deal. But when you look at PJ Washington, yeah, undersized as a big man, 6'7", but a 7'3" wingspan. His natural position's a 4. He has the ability to stretch the floor and hit threes. A career 36% three-point shooter. He has value as a floor spacer there. But then also when you just look at, 5.2 defensive rebounds for his career, 2.1 threes, 1.2 blocks, and over 1 steal per game. Come on, man. PJ Washington can absolutely help contribute to a team. And I would not be surprised if, some teams are waiting, right, to see. And there's going to be a team that when free agency is all left and done, that's going to have a lot of money left, and they're going to throw some money at restricted free agents like PJ Washington. And I don't know if the Hornets are even going to be willing to match. But PJ Washington definitely deserves a deal, and he can definitely contribute on a bunch of teams at the NBA level. Next up is one of his teammates, Kelly Oubre Jr., who has his own definite issues, can be a bit of a chucker. Defensively, he has his issues there as well. He's never really been able to figure it out, right? He hits his threes at an average rate, but overall, this guy is a guy who can be a high-volume scorer for you. When you look at the importance of bench scoring in the modern NBA, he's definitely a guy that can come in, and if you look at him at the bare minimum, can be a scorer for you off the bench. Now, you want to have the right situation for him, absolutely, but I really do like Kelly Oubre Jr., and so I think he's going to be somebody who can absolutely contribute on teams as well. Next up, Darius Bazley. If for nothing else, the youth, 23 years old, he's shown a bit of an upside, right? He doesn't really shoot the 3 ball at an overall great clip or anything like that. But listen, he can be played as a small ball 5, a 4. He can that 3-point range isn't there, 29% in 2022-2023 in the 3-point range, but he can definitely contribute to an NBA roster as well. Next up, guy from my team, Ayo Dosunmu. Now, this is a guy who's came into the NBA as a second-round pick, got on the court initially because of his defense and how well he played defense, eventually took over that starting point guard role when Lonzo Ball went down for the Chicago Bulls, came into last season, won that starting point guard position, but, yes, had an absolute sophomore slump. Another restricted free agent, so I understand why he doesn't have a deal yet, but at 23 years old, that defensive upside that he's already shown, what he showed as a playmaker on the collegiate level, I'm surprised some teams have not offered Ayo Dosunmu a contract yet, but I do think that it's coming for Ayo sooner rather than later, and I do think it's deserved. And there are enough reasons to think that he can definitely have a bounce-back season as well. Next up that I want to talk about is Diallo, and this is a guy who, listen, 25 years old, 6'5", with a 6'11" wingspan, can do some things, right? 56.9% on 2-point shots and 72% within 3 feet of the rim. This is a guy who Yeah, played the last 2 seasons with the Detroit Pistons, but on the back end of your bench, or even maybe even a little higher than that, is a guy that can absolutely contribute if he's given the opportunity, and we'll see if he gets that. Next up that I want to talk about as well, TJ Warren, the vet, right? Injuries are the biggest concern for him, but when you look at when he's able to be on the court, the dude can flat out contribute, right? And he hasn't played a lot of games. And, in 2022-23 was supposed to be his bounce back year. He played in 42 games, averages 7.5 points per game, shot 32% from three. And only his 30th birthday coming in September. That's crazy, right? I would have thought TJ Warren was a lot older than that. Of course, the injury concerns are there. Before any team that needs some type of veteran coming off the bench with some upside, TJ Warren absolutely can be that. Next up, Jalen Noel. Now, this is a guy who played with the Minnesota Timberwolves, 24 years old. Still, not a lot of great size. He plays more wing, 6'4", with a 6'7" wingspan. But listen, this guy can shoot the ball and be efficient. 54% from two-point range. That three-point shooting percentage isn't nothing to really to sing home about. But this is a guy who I'm surprised with the upside hasn't found a team either. Another veteran on this list, Terrence Ross. Really surprised Terrence Ross hasn't found a team. Yes, absolute defensive woes, but as a player that can come in, do some spark plug things for you off the bench. Yes, that's dropping a little bit. Shot the ball 36.8% from deep last season, so he can, and that's with the Phoenix Suns, so he can still stretch the floor for you. Brings in a veteran, probably isn't going to cost too much. But yeah, those are some of the players that I'm kind of surprised are still out there on the market. Let me know any guys that you think that you're surprised that haven't signed with the team yet. Also, let me know what you guys think on Pop and the Spurs as well. But that's my time for today. Make sure you're following the show at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you need to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. All right, tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.